My friends for Joe's you've avoided. My friends for Joe, today we do not speak about success. We do not speak about money. We do not even speak about the brain, the inner command center of your destiny. Because the greatest battlefield you will ever walk upon is not outside you. It is inside your own skull. Your brain can be your prison, or it can be your liberation. And the difference is consciousness. Most people wake up in the morning and immediately become servants to their own thoughts. A single anxious idea appears, and the body tightens, a memory of failure surfaces, and confidence collapses. A comparison enters the mind, and self-worth shrinks. The tragedy is not that these thoughts arise. The tragedy is that they are believed without question. Your brain generates thoughts the way your heart generates beats. It is an organ of activity, not authority. Yet somewhere along the way, you began to treat every thought as a command, every fear as prophecy, every doubt as truth, and so the servant quietly became the master. But understand this clearly: a thought is an event, not an identity. It passes through you. It is not you. The brain is conditioned by past experiences. It stores pain, embarrassment, rejection, failure, and then attempts to protect you from ever feeling them again. That protective mechanism often disguises itself as logic. It whispers, "Don't try, you might fail." It says, "Stay small, it's safer." It insists, "You are not ready." And because the brain's primary function is survival, not greatness, it will always choose safety over expansion unless guided by something higher. This is why awareness is power. When you observe your thoughts instead of immediately obeying them, you create distance. In that distance lies freedom. You begin to notice patterns, the recurring self-doubt, the familiar excuses, the subtle fears that masquerade as rationality. You realize that much of what you call your personality is merely conditioning replaying itself. Carl Jung believed that the unconscious directs much of human behavior. When you are unaware of these hidden forces, you call the outcome fate. But when you bring them into consciousness, you reclaim authorship of your life. Your brain says, "I am tired." But your deeper self asks, "Or are you avoiding discomfort?" Your brain says, "You are not capable." But your deeper self asks, "Based on what evidence?" Your brain says, "Wait for the perfect moment." But your deeper self knows growth begins in imperfection. The servant must be instructed. The brain requires direction. Without a clear aim, it drifts toward distraction. Without discipline, it gravitates toward ease. Without meaning, it sinks into apathy. Think of your mind as powerful machinery. Left unattended, it runs wild, but guided with intention, it builds empires. The same brain that invents excuses can design solutions. The same imagination that creates catastrophic scenarios can construct visionary futures. What determines which path it takes? Leadership. And you are meant to be that leader. When you set a goal with emotional clarity, the brain begins to search for opportunities. When you repeatedly choose disciplined action, neural pathways strengthen. When you challenge limiting beliefs, new perspectives form. The brain adapts. It learns. It reshapes itself according to the commands it receives consistently. But here is the deeper truth. Your brain does not respond to force as effectively as it responds to identity. If you constantly say, "I am weak," it will gather evidence to confirm it. If you declare, "I am becoming stronger," it begins scanning for behaviors aligned with that belief. The servant obeys the story you tell it. Many people attempt to silence negative thoughts through suppression. This only strengthens them. Instead, observe them calmly, question them, reframe them, replace them deliberately. Over time, the brain learns that fear is not the ruler, awareness is. You are not the voice that criticizes you. You are the consciousness that hears it. You are not the impulse that seeks comfort. You are the will that can override it. The moment you internalize this distinction, something shifts. You no longer panic when doubt appears. You no longer collapse when anxiety rises. You recognize them as temporary mental weather, not permanent identity. And slowly, consistently, you retrain your mind. You wake up and choose intention Before distraction, you act despite uncertainty. You move forward even when the brain prefers retreat. This is mastery, not over the world, but over the inner instrument that shapes your perception of it. But it is programmable, it is intelligent, but it requires guidance. It is protective, but it must be challenged. You are not here to be ruled by automatic thinking. You are here to evolve beyond it. The servant is ready. The question is, will you step into leadership? Motivation is often misunderstood. Many believe it is a fleeting surge of energy, a temporary feeling of excitement that will carry them through challenges. They chase it like a shadow, hoping that if they feel inspired for a moment, action will follow. But the brain does not operate on fleeting feelings alone. It is far more complex. It does not respond to mere pressure, guilt, or superficial reward. What it responds to, what truly ignites its power, is meaning. Without it, effort becomes laborious, work becomes a burden, days pass without growth. The brain craves a reason that transcends comfort, a cause that reaches deep into the psyche, a vision that resonates with the self. When you act simply because someone told you to, or because society expects it, the brain obeys reluctantly, if at all. It looks for shortcuts, it seeks ease, it quietly rebels. But when the action is tied to meaning, the brain releases a torrent of energy, focus, and resilience. Ask yourself, why do I rise each day? Why do I struggle? Who benefits if I remain small? What will happen if I never attempt to reach my potential? These are not idle questions, they are the very mechanisms through which the brain aligns with purpose. Jung taught that the psyche seeks wholeness. It is naturally oriented toward growth when it sees the path clearly. Meaning acts as the bridge between desire and fulfillment. Without it, the brain wanders in aimless patterns, creating anxiety, frustration, and fatigue. With it, the brain finds clarity, direction, and inexhaustible drive. Meaning gives context to every action. It transforms repetitive tasks into rituals of self-creation. It turns obstacles into challenges meant to test and strengthen. It transforms suffering into learning and failure into feedback. When the brain understands the why, the how becomes easier, almost automatic. Motivation is no longer a battle. It becomes an inevitable consequence of purpose. Furthermore, the connection between meaning and motivation is deeply personal. External rewards, money, recognition, approval, are transient. They excite the brain briefly, but they do not sustain. Meaning comes from within. It comes from aligning your actions with your values, your vision, and the highest version of yourself. When the brain perceives that alignment, it interprets every effort as necessary, every struggle as worthwhile, and every sacrifice as meaningful. And meaning is not always grand or obvious. It is not always a world-changing mission or an epic achievement. Sometimes it is as simple as the decision to be better than you were yesterday, to nurture a relationship, to create something beautiful, or to confront a fear you have long avoided. The brain responds to this subtle conscious recognition that your life has purpose. It lights up pathways of resilience, focus, and determination that no external stimulus can replicate. Motivation, therefore, is not something to chase outside yourself. It is something to awaken inside yourself. It begins the moment you discover a reason that resonates with your soul, a purpose that feels inevitable, and a vision that your unconscious mind recognizes as essential. When meaning guides you, the brain ceases its resistance. Fear no longer paralyzes, laziness no longer convinces, and doubt no longer dictates. The mind, once a wandering instrument of habit, becomes a focused engine of creation, fueled by clarity and the undeniable necessity of the mission you have chosen for yourself. Your brain craves significance. Your actions crave significance. Your life craves significance. And when you provide it, motivation is no longer a question. It becomes your natural state, unstoppable, relentless, and unwavering. Inside each of us resides a shadow, a part of the mind we often refuse to see, a repository of fears, doubts, impulses, and desires we consider unacceptable. We try to suppress it, hide it, or deny its existence. We tell ourselves, I am rational, I am disciplined, I am good, and yet, lurking beneath the surface, the shadow waits, persistent and patient, shaping our thoughts, decisions, and behaviors in ways we rarely recognize. Jung called this shadow the unconscious, the hidden self, that contains everything we refuse to acknowledge in ourselves. Most people make the mistake of treating the shadow as an enemy. They believe it must be conquered or eradicated. They fear that acknowledging it will unleash chaos, that its darkness will consume them, but running from it only strengthens it. The energy you expend avoiding the shadow feeds its power. The more you deny it, the more it drives your actions secretly, often manifesting in anger, resentment, self-sabotage, and fear. It becomes a puppet master behind the curtain of your consciousness. To confront the shadow is not a one-time act. It is a lifelong engagement. It requires courage, honesty, and the willingness to sit in discomfort. You must examine the parts of yourself you despise, envy, or reject. You must stare at your insecurities, your shame, your anger, your jealousy, your greed, and your laziness without flinching. It is not easy, it is unsettling, but it is necessary, because the shadow contains not only your darkness, but also your unrecognized potential. The impulses and traits that seem destructive can be transformed into power. The fear that keeps you frozen can be converted into awareness and vigilance. The anger that tempts you to lash out can be redirected into determination and action. The parts of you that feel weak, unworthy, or incapable, when acknowledged and integrated, can become sources of strength, insight, and creativity. Jung emphasized that what we resist persists, that the energy of the unconscious cannot be destroyed, only integrated. When you face your shadow, you reclaim the energy it once wasted on controlling you. Confronting your shadow also means embracing paradox. You are not purely good or purely bad. You contain contradictions, complexities, and conflicts. Accepting this truth liberates you from the tyranny of perfectionism and the trap of self-judgment. The moment you recognize that your shadow is part of your psyche, you no longer fight yourself at every turn. Instead, you learn to work with yourself, to harness your hidden energies, and to transform inner conflict into growth. Shadow work is not comfortable, but it is transformative. Every time you observe and integrate a previously hidden part of yourself, you expand the boundaries of your consciousness. You reclaim autonomy over thoughts that once compelled you unconsciously. You begin to act deliberately rather than reactively. Your choices become conscious, guided by awareness rather than instinctive fear. The shadow is not punishment. It is a teacher. Its lessons are harsh, but they are necessary. By confronting it, you awaken a deeper intelligence within yourself, an intelligence that understands the roots of your behavior, the patterns that have governed your life, and the potential that has remained dormant. This integration does not eliminate struggle, but it equips you to navigate it with resilience, insight, and wisdom. Ultimately, confronting your shadow is about wholeness. It is about embracing all parts of yourself, light and dark, strength and weakness, virtue and vice. The more fully you integrate the shadow, the more your brain aligns with conscious purpose rather than unconscious fear. Motivation becomes authentic, creativity becomes richer, and your life becomes an expression of depth, courage, and integrity. Do not flee from the shadow. Do not ignore it, criticize it, or suppress it. Meet it, observe it, listen to it, understand it, and slowly, deliberately, transform it into an ally. In this confrontation lies liberation. In this confrontation lies power. In this confrontation lies the path to the highest version of yourself. Discipline is often misunderstood. Many perceive it as restriction, as the denial of pleasure, or as an external imposition that saps the joy from life. But in reality, discipline is not punishment. It is the architect of freedom. It is the bridge between intention and achievement, the mechanism through which your brain reshapes itself to align with your highest potential. The brain is plastic. It is malleable. Every thought you entertain, every action you repeat, every habit you form, carves neural pathways, strengthening some circuits, while weakening others. Discipline is the deliberate act of choosing which pathways to reinforce and which to let fade into irrelevance. At first, discipline is uncomfortable. The brain resists it because the old habits, the patterns of ease, have become familiar, predictable, and deceptively safe. It prefers avoidance to effort, comfort to growth, and routine to transformation. Each time you push beyond what is easy, each time you act in accordance with your vision rather than your impulses, your brain experiences a subtle form of resistance. You feel tension, doubt, and fatigue. You may question whether the effort is worth it, but this is precisely the moment when discipline begins to rewire your destiny. Every choice you make in the face of resistance strengthens neural pathways associated with resilience, focus, and self-mastery. Discipline is not only about restriction, it is about intention. It is not simply saying no to distractions, but saying yes to your higher self. It is not enduring suffering for its own sake, but channeling your energy into actions that cultivate growth. Repetition, persistence, and consistency are the tools through which discipline sculpts identity. Over time, what once required tremendous effort becomes automatic. Your brain adapts. The discomfort fades, and a new internal structure emerges, one in which excellence, courage, and purposeful action are no longer foreign, they are habitual. The transformative power of discipline lies not in the immediate rewards, but in the cumulative effect. Every morning you rise early to study, train, or create, you reinforce a narrative within your mind. I am capable. I am committed. I overcome resistance. Every small, repeated act of courage, focus, or restraint compounds, building a life in alignment with your highest vision. Discipline rewires not only your habits, but your identity, your self-perception, and ultimately your destiny. It is through discipline that the brain learns to obey the commands of the conscious self rather than the impulses of the moment. Fear no longer dictates action. Laziness no longer becomes an excuse. The habitual patterns that once defined your life are reshaped into channels that serve your long-term purpose. The neural architecture of your mind transforms, creating pathways that support resilience, creativity, and the relentless pursuit of meaning. Discipline also trains patience and perspective. It teaches that mastery is not instantaneous, that growth is gradual, and that the brain must be guided over time. The victories achieved through effort feel deeper, more satisfying, and more enduring than those gained by chance or convenience. Each act of self-control, each commitment honored, each discomfort embraced becomes a testament to your capacity for transformation. In essence, discipline is the invisible hand that guides the architecture of your life. It aligns intention with action, thought with behavior, and desire with reality. Without it, talent, vision, and intelligence can falter under the weight of inconsistency. With it, even ordinary abilities can be amplified into extraordinary outcomes. The disciplined brain becomes a conscious co-creator of destiny, capable of surpassing limitations, overcoming obstacles, and manifesting a life of meaning and purpose. So do not mistake discomfort for failure, nor repetition for monotony. Each act of discipline is a stroke upon the canvas of your life, shaping a future that is not left to chance, but forged by deliberate, consistent effort. Through discipline, the mind learns to obey the highest calling of the self, and through the mind, the destiny of the individual is transformed. Emotions are often misunderstood. We have been taught to fear them, suppress them, or judge them as weaknesses. Society praises stoicism, control, and rationality, while quietly labeling sadness, anger, or fear as flaws to be hidden. But the truth, as Carl Jung understood, is that emotions are not enemies. They are energy dynamic forces within the psyche that contain immense information and transformative power. Every feeling you experience is a signal from your unconscious, a message that demands attention, understanding, and conscious engagement. Fear is not simply a limitation. It is information about boundaries, risks, and opportunities. Anger is not merely destructive, it is raw energy pointing to injustice. unacknowledged needs, or misalignment between reality and your values. Sadness is not a weakness, it is a reflection of loss, longing, or unmet potential. Joy is not frivolous, it is the confirmation that your actions are aligned with the deeper self. When you recognize that emotions are carriers of energy, you begin to see them not as obstacles, but as guides, powerful currents within your psyche that, when directed consciously, can propel you toward growth and transformation. The brain processes emotion in a way that is deeply connected to motivation and action. When an emotion is suppressed or ignored, its energy does not vanish. It accumulates, often manifesting as anxiety, tension, or compulsive behavior. The shadow of unprocessed feelings can dictate choices in ways you scarcely understand. Conversely, when emotion is observed, decoded, and understood, it becomes fuel. Acknowledged anger can become determination. Experienced fear can sharpen focus. Felt grief can cultivate empathy. Every emotion, once understood, carries the potential to create profound inner movement. Integration is key. Emotions should not control you, but neither should they be denied. To experience a feeling fully, to let it exist without judgment, is to give it direction. Ask yourself, what is this emotion telling me? What unmet need, unresolved conflict, or suppressed desire does it represent? How can this energy be channeled rather than wasted? By exploring these questions, the brain begins to associate emotion not with chaos or threat, but with insight, clarity, and action. Many people believe that being motivated means always feeling positive, always being excited, or constantly enjoying the journey. This is a lie. Motivation is not the absence of negative emotion, it is the mastery of emotion as energy. Every discomfort, every doubt, every pang of uncertainty can be converted into forward motion when approached consciously. In fact, the most transformative motivation often arises precisely from negative emotions, from dissatisfaction, frustration, or longing, because they demand resolution, change, and growth. Furthermore, emotions connect the conscious mind with the unconscious. They are the language through which the hidden self communicates, the bridge that allows the conscious mind to access deep, intuitive wisdom. Anger may reveal hidden injustice, fear may uncover unacknowledged desire, sadness may illuminate values you have neglected, joy may highlight the path of alignment. When you treat emotion as energy rather than an obstacle, you create a dialogue between the conscious and unconscious, a dialogue that empowers insight, innovation, and authentic action. Learning to work with emotion also strengthens self-discipline and resilience. The brain responds to repeated conscious engagement with feelings by forming new neural pathways. Instead of reacting impulsively or suppressing energy, you learn to respond deliberately, harnessing the power of emotion for purpose rather than letting it control you. Over time, this creates a mind that is not only motivated, but also wise, self-aware, and capable of sustaining effort in the face of difficulty. Ultimately, emotions are gifts, signals, energy, and guidance, all in one. To run from them is to squander their power. To suppress them is to weaken your connection to yourself. But to understand, integrate, and channel them is to unlock a force that can energize your brain, align your will, and propel your life forward with precision and meaning. The moment you see emotion as energy rather than enemy, you stop resisting life and begin harnessing its most potent currents to become the person you are truly capable of being. Within you exists a blueprint, a version of yourself that is whole, capable, and fully realized. Carl Jung called this the self, the archetype of your total being, integrating both conscious and unconscious elements, light and shadow, strength and vulnerability. Most people live without awareness of this inner map, drifting through life shaped by circumstance, habit, and fleeting impulses. They react rather than create. But the mind, your brain, is extraordinarily responsive to vision. It cannot distinguish clearly imagined experience from reality at the level of neural pathways. This is the power of imagination. When you vividly envision the self you are becoming, you begin to train your brain to align behavior with that vision, long before the circumstances of life catch up. Visualization is not wishful thinking, it is rehearsal. It is the conscious shaping of identity. When you close your eyes and see yourself as disciplined, courageous, and purposeful, you are sending signals to your unconscious mind, your neural circuits, and your psyche that this is the person you intend to embody. Your body, thoughts, and decisions begin to align with that version of you. The more detailed and vivid your vision, the stronger its effect. How does this self move? How does this self speak? How does this self react in moments of challenge? Every detail becomes a blueprint for action. The self you envision is not limited to accomplishments or external measures. It is not merely about wealth, status, or recognition. It is about integrity, strength, and wholeness. It is about embracing your shadow, mastering your impulses, and aligning your choices with your highest values. It is about cultivating resilience in the face of adversity, clarity in the midst of confusion, and courage when fear rises. By repeatedly imagining this version of yourself, your brain begins to reorganize its priorities, strengthening pathways that support persistence, focus, and intentional action. This process is active, not passive. It requires engagement and reflection. Visualization alone, without corresponding action, is empty. But when combined with deliberate practice, discipline, and shadow work, it becomes a transformative force. Every step you take toward the vision reinforces the neural map you have created. Every challenge you overfund is a confirmation of the reality you are building. The brain begins to interpret obstacles as opportunities for growth, not threats to survival. Motivation becomes internal, fueled by alignment with an image of self that your unconscious recognizes as essential. Envisioning your higher self also cultivates psychological cohesion. The conscious and unconscious parts of your mind often pull in opposite directions, creating inner conflict, doubt, and indecision. By holding a clear image of the self you wish to become, you give your unconscious mind a target, a structure around which your thoughts, emotions, and behaviors can organize. This alignment reduces internal friction, enhances clarity, and fosters a sense of inevitability. The sense that the person you are becoming is not a distant possibility, but an unfolding reality already in formation. Moreover, envisioning yourself is an act of responsibility. It is an acknowledgement that your life is not a series of random events, but a creation shaped by conscious intention. Each day offers opportunities to take small, deliberate steps that bring your reality closer to the image in your mind. Over time, these steps accumulate, and the neural architecture of your brain, once reactive and wandering, becomes aligned with deliberate growth. You begin to embody traits, habits, and responses that reflect the highest version of yourself. Finally, envisioning the self you are becoming is a practice in hope, courage, and resilience. Life will challenge you. The path will be strewn with doubt, setbacks, and fear. But when you carry a clear vision of who you are meant to be, these challenges are reframed. They become tests, exercises in becoming, rather than obstacles meant to deter. Your brain, once enslaved to fleeting impulses and conditioned fears, now becomes a vehicle for intentional transformation. To envision yourself is to take authorship of your destiny. It is to plant a seed in the fertile soil of your psyche and nurture it with thought, action, and reflection. With each day, the seed grows into the reality of your higher self, and in this process, you do not merely hope for change, you become it. In the modern world, we are surrounded by noise, constant notifications, endless conversations, flashing screens, and an unrelenting stream of information bombard the mind. The brain, a complex organ designed for focus, reflection, and integration, becomes fragmented under this relentless stimulation. We mistake activity for productivity, chatter for clarity, and distraction for progress. Yet true power, the kind that transforms thought into action, chaos into creation, and potential into reality, is found not in noise, but in silence, is not merely the absence of sound. It is the presence of attention, of awareness, of deliberate inward focus. In silence, the mind sheds its compulsive chatter and begins to observe itself. You notice patterns of thought, recurring fears, unexamined beliefs, and hidden desires. You begin to perceive the impulses that drive your behavior unconsciously. Without silence, these patterns operate in the shadows, shaping your life without your conscious consent. With silence, they emerge into consciousness, and in that emergence lies control. The brain is like a stormy sea when overstimulated. Thoughts crash upon thoughts, emotions swirl unchecked, and impulses surge unpredictably. Silence calms the waters. It allows the unconscious mind, the reservoir of insight, creativity, and wisdom, to speak. In moments of stillness, solutions appear, ideas crystallize, and direction becomes clear. The brain begins to integrate experiences rather than merely reacting to them. What once felt confusing or overwhelming is reframed with understanding, and what once seemed distant or impossible becomes approachable. Silence also strengthens resilience. In quiet, you confront the self without distraction. You face your fears, doubts, and shadows directly, without the comforting numbing of external noise. The process can be uncomfortable, even painful, because it requires honest reflection, yet it is precisely in this discomfort that transformation occurs. You learn to sit with tension rather than avoid it, to observe emotion without being swept away, and to find clarity amidst inner turbulence. Through silence, the brain develops the capacity for deliberate response rather than reactive behavior. Moreover, silence cultivates creativity. Ideas do not emerge from constant stimulus. They arise from space, from pause, from the gaps between noise. The brain requires moments of quiet to connect dots, form new associations, and imagine possibilities. Many of history's most profound insights were born not in the clamor of activity, but in contemplative solitude. Silence allows the unconscious to communicate with the conscious mind, bridging intuition with action, instinct with reason, and imagination with execution. Silence is also a source of energy. Constant mental noise exhausts the brain, scattering focus and depleting willpower. But when you cultivate stillness, attention becomes concentrated, thought becomes sharper, and motivation becomes clearer. The energy once dissipated in distraction is redirected toward purpose, reflection, and intentional action. Your mind becomes a tool rather than a chaotic storm, a precise instrument capable of creating, analyzing, and transforming reality. Finally, silence is the gateway to self-mastery. It allows you to step back from the external world and listen to the internal. It connects you with your inner values, your deeper purpose, and your authentic self. In silence, you do not merely react to life, you understand it. You perceive what truly matters, recognize the forces that drive you, and make choices aligned with your highest vision. Power, therefore, is not the result of force or noise, but of presence, attention, and reflection. The modern world seeks to convince you that action, sound, and stimulation are essential for progress. Yet those who understand true mastery know that the most potent source of power lies in the quiet spaces between. Silence is where clarity is born, where insight emerges, where the unconscious meets the conscious mind. It is in stillness that the brain organizes itself, that the self awakens, and that potential becomes reality. To embrace silence is to reclaim the mind from distraction, to cultivate wisdom amidst chaos, and to discover the energy that lies not in movement, but in mindful stillness. It is in silence that you meet yourself, confront your inner depths, and harness the most profound source of personal power, the power to act deliberately, think clearly, and become the person you are truly meant to be. Your brain is not broken, it is powerful beyond measure. But power without awareness becomes self-destruction. Power with consciousness becomes greatness. You are not here to drift. You are here to awaken. Train your brain. Understand your shadow. Attach yourself to meaning. Choose discipline over impulse. And one day you will look back and realize the moment you decided to master your mind was the moment your life transformed. Or it can liberate you. The choice is yours.